On first reading, 6A, please.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 10, Section 1033, so as to adopt the 2012 edition of the International Energy Conservation Code as amended as the official energy code of the City of Chattanooga.
Thank you. B, please.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 14, so as to adopt the 2017 edition of the National Electric Code and certain appendices as revised and amended as the official electrical code of the City of Chattanooga.
Okay, on these upcoming planning items, they have already been reviewed, items 6 through K. Do we have any questions regarding any of 6 through K, Council? Okay, thank you. We will then proceed to resolutions 7A.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Captain Robert Thompson as a special police unarmed for the fire department to do special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
B, please.
A resolution authorizing the appointment of Jorge David Espinal as a special police officer unarmed for the Department of Economic and Community Development to do special duty as prescribed herein, subject to certain conditions.
C, please.
A resolution authorizing the chief operating officer to enter into a contract with Tyler Tech, previously named Socrata, in order to provide open data visualization, and performance analytics platform for the City of Chattanooga in the amount of $135,000 with an option to renew for 2 additional one-year periods with annual amounts up to $135,000 each.
Okay, thank you. The following resolution planning items D and E we have already reviewed. Are there any questions? Thank you, Council. At this time, I would turn the desk over to Youth and Family Development, Councilman Kumran.
All right, thank you, Chair. Move to approve the minutes. Thank you. So we're gonna have a presentation from Youth and Family Development for Baby U.
Thank you so much. I'm Donna McConaughey. I'm the CEO at Signal Centers. And of course, we have the contract to work with Baby University. We have 3 people here today who are going to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to. The first is Elizabeth Connolly. She is the director of Baby University. We have a new deputy director, Joyce Jackson, and Max Taylor, who you heard from last time, who is the evaluator from the University of Tennessee Social Work Office of Research and Public Service. Don't ask me to say that again. We thank you so much. I want to recognize and thank Erskine Oglesby for being at our graduation. Many of you have been at our events, and we're very grateful. Elizabeth will take it away.
I think we have a presentation coming up, hopefully.
We got some seats on this second row if anybody wanna come sit down.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, so we respect your time. Thank you for allowing us to come out here this afternoon and present some updated data and information to you. As a recap, our Baby U mission is to effectively prepare children for lifelong success. And we say lifelong because we know that 80 to 90% of brain development structure is formed by age 3. And we also know that some of the things that happen to us, good or bad, in our earliest, most formative years really lay the framework and the groundwork for some of our future child development and school and throughout life. And so Baby U wants to partner with families to help ensure that children are born with the best start to life possible. Some updated enrollment data, we currently have 178 families enrolled, and we know that adults don't exist in isolation and neither do their babies. And so we're really serving everyone in the whole household, which equates to over 700 total people. Also, the 178 families that are enrolled is 75% of our caseload capacity. So in other words, we are 75% full currently. And as you know, we are working toward expanding our services into the Brainerd or Midtown area. Further enrollment data shows that we have 103 pregnancies. Of those 103, 86 children have been born, and we have a few that are still pregnant, or currently pregnant. Out of those 86 children that have been born, almost all of them have been born at healthy birth weight. So 80 of them have been born at healthy birth weights. And I'm going to flip forward to the slide there. And we also know that 93% of our children are developing on track. And we're checking development through ASQs, which are developmental checkups. And those cover 5 different cognitive domains that I think Max will touch on a little bit later. We are educating parents about appropriate development and developmental resources, and we're also making referrals for further intervention when that may be warranted. And again, 80 of our 86 children that have been born at healthy birth weights, and the few that were not were expected due to high-risk pregnancies or having twins and other reasons that were anticipated. And we really want children to be born at healthy birth weight and on time because that can help set the groundwork to, again, give them the best start in life possible. So this is a chart showing our prenatal care. We know that 100% of our families access prenatal care versus only about 43% in our target communities. And then followed only slightly higher by Hamilton County and by the state of Tennessee. And so that is one thing that we're making sure to link all of our families to. We also have some special goals for our teens, and those are to stay in school, to graduate on time, to delay additional pregnancies, and to access prenatal care. In fact, we know that 100% of our teens who were enrolled in high school at Baby U enrollment have graduated on time or are on track to graduate. All of them have also delayed any additional pregnancies, and of course, all of them access prenatal care as well. We currently have 33 teen parents enrolled. 16 of them are currently enrolled in high school or are working toward the HISEP. 14 have graduated, and another 15 are employed. Just getting back there. Okay, sorry about that. Can we go back one slide? It's not letting me. Thank you. So we are really proud of our teens because nationally the average is only that 53% of teen moms graduate on time or are on track to graduate on time versus all of our Baby U teens that were in school at Baby U enrollment. So we also know that our teens are not only college bound, but some of them are in college now. So this is a picture of our very first teen ever enrolled in Baby University. She had a healthy baby. She has graduated high school on time. And now she is attending Chat State. She began last fall. So this is a picture of her on her first day of school wearing her Chat State Tigers t-shirt. So we're just very proud of her. And in fact, we have 11 parents who are now in college that were not enrolled in college at initial enrollment. And finally, some outcomes and some of our other data. We have 119 families who have either gained employment or improved their employment since Baby U enrollment. We also have 69 families who have improved their housing conditions or obtained housing at all. We work with a lot of families who are homeless or transitional. And then we've also connected 111 families to car seats, so they have a safe way to be transported in the car. And then another 187 children have been linked to Pack and Plays, which of course provide a safe sleep environment, further reducing infant mortality rates. Now I'll turn it over to Max, who's with our external evaluator, to talk about some of our assessment over time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This slide is showing results from the self-sufficiency matrix, which is a tool that enables practitioners, policymakers, and researchers in public health care, social services, and related work fields to assess the degree of self-sufficiency of their clients across a variety of domains of life functioning. The instrument used by Baby U is administered at intake and then subsequently every 2 to 6 months. In this presentation, we've summarized the differences between the percentage of people who scored at level 3 or above in the scale to the right, indicating self-sufficiency at their first assessment at intake and then the latest available assessment. There were 131 people with at least 2 assessments as of last October. It can be seen in this slide that in the employment domain, the percentage of people who scored at 3 or above increased from 29.1% to 62.8%. In the child care domain, the percentage of people who scored at 3 or above increased from 73 to 83%. And these assessments are directed by partnership of the Baby U specialist and the client themselves. So these are goals that are chosen in partnership between the caseworker and the client. All of the increases in the combined proportions of the respondents who scored 3 of basic self-sufficiency, 4 building capacity, or 5 fully self-sufficient were statistically significant except for adult education. This next slide shows the ages and stages questionnaire that Elizabeth mentioned earlier, which pinpoints the developmental progress of children between the ages of 2 and 66 months in 5 key areas. Communication, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, problem solving, and personal social skills. What this graph is indicating, scores above the cutoff point suggest that a child is on track developmentally. Scores near the cutoff points call for discussion and monitoring, and scores beneath the cutoff points indicate a need for further assessment. And as you can see here, the biggest increase in the on-track percentage was in the area of problem-solving skills from 88.3% to 95.1%. This is a statistically significant increase, and statistically significant meaning, of course, not due to just random variation. Here we go. The parental assessment of protective factors is a list of 36 statements across 4 protective factors that indicate protection against child abuse and neglect. This is again administered at intake and subsequently every 2 to 6 months. And here we see 4 of the domains and an increase in the proportion of participants who score high in the pre-assessment and then scored high at the most recent assessment. And the increases in the proportions of participants with maximum scores was statistically significant for all subscales except for the social and emotional competence of children, which approached significance. And then this slide is another way of indicating the self-sufficiency matrix data showing parents and families moving towards greater self-sufficiency. What you're seeing here is the number of families who rated at least 8 of the 18 social SSM domains as in crisis at the time of the first domain administration. 9 of them were not assessed again. However, out of the 21 who were assessed at least twice, only 7 rated 8 SSM domains at 1 or 2 at the second administration, and only 3 at the third administration. So the number of families in crisis is decreasing over the course of their tenure with Baby University. And, okay, am I handing it back to you? Thank you for your time.
So as you can tell, we are very proud of our families and their progress towards self-sufficiency and stability. They are inspiring, resilient, and determined. And so every year we want to host a Baby U graduation celebration for our families that have progressed through the tiered graduation system and have obtained healthy pregnancies and understand early brain development and have reached greater self-sufficiency and stability. So this is a picture of our whole group. You can see Councilman Oglesby and Ariel Ford in there. And then we also had Councilman Oglesby provide our welcome address, and Mayor Burke provided some congratulatory remarks. The 2 women on the left and right, they were our inspirational speakers. They were both teen parents and have are very successful business women now. And then we always have photos on the red carpet, or in this case, the black carpet, honoring every one of our families, and then we give superlatives to each family too. So it might be most courageous, most resilient, most determined, along with a swag bag of donated goodies. And I always like to end with just a quick success story. So this is one of my favorites that I haven't been able to share with you yet. But a while back, we had enrolled a mom, a dad, and her one-year-old, or their one-year-old. At enrollment, the family was living in a hotel where mom worked, and they needed a lot of just the very basic needs: food, diapers, a car seat, transportation for when people would take their family. They would need a car seat for that. Just a whole host of things, pack and plays, everything, you name it, they kind of needed that. Mom's first goal was actually to get her last name changed from her ex-husband's name to her current husband's name. Her ex-husband had been abusive, and she just wasn't sure, what the first steps to that were. And so we were able to help her navigate some of those processes and even transported her to the Social Security Administration so we could have that early win that she was so proud of. We also, in the meantime, were helping connect them to food stamps, a car seat, a pack and play for safe sleep, WIC, and many other resources. Also at the same time, Dad was looking for a job but needed proper photo identification to secure employment. So we were able to help walk him through that process and connect him with photo identification so he could get a job. Within about 6 months of that job, he was promoted to a manager. And then within about another 6 months, he changed jobs with even higher income. So now I'm thrilled to report Mom is working 2 jobs, Dad has his full-time stable job, and the family was able to purchase the first car that they have ever purchased in their lifetime. And so furthermore, they were also able to come off of all subsidies and public assistance. And so I feel like this really showcases a perfect example of how intensive case management can be utilized to partner with families, not only with early healthy development, but also with a family unit and stability as a whole and general wellness. So I want to point, I think Donna wants to point out your city district maps that are on the right-hand side of your packets.
Yeah, one of the things that we've heard from you is that you want us to do this everywhere. So we are now. Every one of your districts has at least one baby youth family in it. And you may say, well, why are you serving people who are living in middle-class neighborhoods? But our hope is that we're going to help people move into the middle class. We're going to help people get the resources they need. And our clients don't stay where they are. So, and oftentimes we'll take any family who is homeless into Baby Youth. So, and what we've been successful at is getting them to move on to have permanent residence and hopefully employment. So there's a map here for you that tells you how many families are in your district, and we appreciate SWARPS pulling that information together. Do you have questions for us?
All right, Russell.
Can you tell us more about the 119 jobs that the people have received?
Well, we will help people get whatever job they need. And so some of those are low-income jobs. I mean, some of those are working at McDonald's. We had two moms who needed to job share so that they could take care of each other's children. We'll do whatever it takes, but what we want to do is find out, what does this person want to do? And then we help connect them to resources. We may work with the Career Center. We have employment services for adults with disabilities, and so we are constantly doing employer development with employers in the community. So we may know of a job that might be available there. So, yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you're doing a good job to teach young people the need to know about birth, and from that point to educate them. I really appreciate it, and I hope you come my way more in Brainerd.
That's our intent. We're at Brainerd High School now.
I appreciate
that. And the high
that.
school has partnered with us beautifully.
Thank
Their counselors, actually last year, when we went to try to establish a class there, most of the counselors told us that basically if they get pregnant, they drop out of school. So they were able to work with us to get 3 or 4 re-enrolled in school and on track to graduate. And they've been a great partner the school system has.
Thank you very much.
We're also at Howard. Other questions?
Ledford.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Donna, thank you for your presentation, and you've done exactly what we've asked you to do, and that is give us an update on where we are going with this citywide. When I first came to meet with you, you were not touching all of these districts, I know, and I want to thank you for that. As the funding and resources have been more available to you, I can see that you are reaching out. My question to you is, for example, in District 4, and I'm looking at the numbers, are those necessarily are they coming from District 4, or have they been enrolled in the program and have relocated or changed their lives and basically moved somewhere to help
Generally
their families?
speaking, we are recruiting in the inner city areas. But many of our, so I don't think we would have to look at the exact people.
Sure.
But I don't believe we will have enrolled anybody who lives in your district. What will have happened is we'll have been working with a family that might have been homeless.
Right.
And when they come out of the shelter, this is where they land.
Very
And so
good.
we're not going to drop somebody because of their geography.
Understood. Thank
So-
you.
The zip code data was taken from the home visit logs as of this month, so that doesn't reflect where they lived when they signed up. It does reflect where they live currently.
Thank you. And that answers Matt's question very much. I appreciate what y'all are doing, and keep up the great work.
One other thing I would tell you too is that this community has stepped forward. Are you familiar with Proposity? Where the Community Foundation and the McClellan Foundation have basically put specific needs out to the community. You get a text message and you can fill that need immediately, and you actually click on it. I get the thing every week, and you fill a need. And the Community Foundation approached us about being one of the test markets. And so very frequently, probably at least 2 or 3 a month, community members will fill a need. We've had car seats and a bed. We've had bedding for children. We've had shoes. We've had diapers donated by the community. And then there have been several folks in the community who have come forward and want to help us. Our next endeavor, as you know, we put clients in our car and take them to the doctor if they don't have another way to get there. One of our next hopes is we're going to get a van. We had someone donate the funds to buy a van. And we will probably hire one of the clients to help with transportation and train them. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Oglesby.
Yeah, Donna, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for your great choice of pictures for your presentation. Okay, excellent job. Okay, but all that aside, talk about how you have worked hard in getting collaboration, because one of the things that we always talk about on this council is collaboration, because we know that's one way of maximizing the dollars that you receive. Could you just talk about some of the partners that helps make this great program happen?
Absolutely. We have a great advisory group, and we have partnerships with the Creative Discovery Museum, hosts us at no charge, lets us come after hours. Read 20 provides books to all of our families and has helped us with many other things. We have staff from Blue Cross who have been a consistent contributor to the program who help. We work with Early Matters, the coalition that's part of 2.0. We have collaborations across the city. The Ladies of Charity, they have a thrift stop, and they let our folks shop there at no charge. They also donate diapers monthly to our program and have helped with other things as well. The Youth Council from the city helps serve at all of our events. They come and interact with our families. There's too many to name, but Elizabeth, do you want to add a few?
Just United Way, and of
Absolutely.
course Proposity, you mentioned them, and I'm sure that there are many others that I'm forgetting, but every month I think we expand our partners and our collaboration, so.
Our board of directors is currently raising diapers, and so is the rest of our staff. We collaborate with the other programs at Signal. We collaborate with other employers as well. And several businesses have had diaper drives for our families as well. That's just a few. You probably know some more, don't you?
No, but I just wanted to let everybody know that, you know, the great work of having partners that support this program and how you maximize all your efforts and all your resources to have such a positive impact on all the families in this community. And I just think that's very important, and I commend you for that, because we wish more organization would have that collaborative feel for how they operate. So once again, thank you for the great job y'all do.
Thank you. And Chattanooga is such a great city. Any organization we approach offers help. And they, you know, when we need help for specific help for a specific family, folks step up in this community. They care about their neighbors. And we think that part of that's because of the leadership here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Ms. Donna, for your presentation. All right. If you go ahead with the resolutions. So- Yeah, I did. Yeah. Go ahead.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Youth and Family Development to execute a contract with Signal Centers for the Baby University program for a 12-month term for an estimated annual expenditure of $750,000.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, now we're gonna move over to Public Works and Transportation Committee.
Yeah, I got one more. I gave Anthony. It's state law, new state law. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Wow, that's pretty good. Didn't even call you up here. That's quick. You have some awards you want to give out, don't you?
We're just excited tonight. Yes, sir. How are you doing? Wanted to take a moment, Mr. Chairman, and present a few accolades to some folks who've achieved some success in our department. Not like all 730 of our employees don't do this every day, but we are always excited to honor individuals and projects that achieve above and beyond and are recognized outside of our organization. So I'd like to do that if you give me the moment.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. In October, several folks attended the Tennessee chapter of APWA conference in Nashville. A few of our Public Works team members were presented awards along with a major project, and I'd like to recognize these individuals now. Kristen Franklin received the Edward C. Archer Young Public Works Leader of the Year Award for success, leading the Citywide Services Division in customer relations and keeping the division on task. During a time of transition, she remained steady and positive presence for the department. Kristen served as the division's responder to Chat 311 request, ensuring customers' requests were completed to the satisfaction and need of our customers. I'd like to recognize Kristen Franklin as an outstanding member of our organization. Thank you, Kristen. Great job. Hope I didn't lose anything. Thanks. Next, I'd like to recognize Kim Strong. She received the W. Larry Edens Award for outstanding service to American Public Works Association, serving as a member of many APWA committees, including the Diversity Committee nationally. Kim volunteers for many local organizations, including the Chamber of Commerce, where she recently won Volunteer of the Year Award as well. As you may remember from this summer, Kim led our very own successful Summer Youth Worker Program. So I'd like to recognize Kimberly Strong. I know. Thank you, Kim. I have Kim's award, and this podium ate it somewhere. Thank you, Kim. All right, next I'd like to recognize Bobby Allen. Bobby received the Charles Walter Nichols Award for leadership in solid waste management and streets construction maintenance in the department. He has played a large role in training and development of his team in road maintenance standards that not only ensure safe passage of our roadways, but that the dollars invested in the maintenance of our roadways are for the long haul and not just quick fixes. So I'd like to recognize Bobby Allen. Great job, Bob. Yes, sir. And I found Kim's award. Oh, you did. It was lodged in here somewhere. Next, I'd like to recognize Alan Wedman. Alan received an award of merit for his efficient and courteous service to Chattanooga. You may recognize his name. He was a participant in the National Equipment Rodeo a few months back. He has been a great morale for the department. As a member of citywide services emergency response team, he leads the charge to treat primary routes, ensuring safe passage in and out of our city during inclement weather. Congratulations to Alan Wedman. Thanks for flipping the slides back. Also, want to recognize several individuals on our Public Works team who participated in who were the recipients of a state award for Project of the Year for Anderson Avenue. Anderson Avenue is a green infrastructure project in Highland Park as part of the consent decree. It improves water quality by using natural materials and vegetation that slows down, filters, and infiltrates stormwater runoff, improving the conditions of the Dobbs Branch area, which flows into the Chattanooga Creek. So many of our team members in water quality engineering and construction engineering participated in this project, along with our consultant, and we were recognized for Project of the Year, and I'll present this to most of our water quality team is here, so many people participated in the Project of the Year, and it's a great honor to win those. Lastly, and we also received recognition recently from the American Council on Engineering Companies. The St. Elmo Drainage Project, which was a $17 million project to correct a drainage issue from the Alton Park and St. Elmo drainage basins. This award was from a different association, but John Lyons accepted the award. John was our project lead. Come on up, John. He was our project lead on this from engineering, and was in Nashville recently to accept the award on the city's behalf. So thank you, John.
He's a good guy to work with.
All right. Thank you for giving me just a moment to recognize our employees. We have some outstanding folks who do outstanding things, and I know it takes some time to allow us to do that in here, and I greatly appreciate that. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about, Mr. Chairman, an issue that came up from last, unless you'd like to go through the agenda, and then we can get into two other additional.
Let's go ahead and go in your direction first, and then we'll get into the agenda, and then go to the stormwater.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Councilman Oglesby.
I noticed we have a number of people standing back along the wall, and we have a few seats in here. If you just want to take a few minutes and find one, see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see at least maybe 7. So I noticed you've been standing back there a while. Thank you, Jester, for,
Yes, sir. Thank you.
and thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I guess they want to get out of here quick. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, last week there was some questions on the Wood Recycle Center. I'd be happy to field some questions after I go through a little bit of information about why we're here. The Wood Recycle Center in December of 2017 changed a bit of our operations to, we hired out our wood grinding operations. So you're probably wondering, why did we do that? We mainly because we needed to purchase about an $850,000 grinder. So we explored some options to, as alternative means to deliver that same service at our wood recycling center. We, the return on that, that investigation resulted in what we thought was going to be about $280,000 in savings. We've realized in the expenses from 1 year, about $362,000 in savings since December of last year compared to the previous year. So what does the Wood Recycling Center do? When brush is collected from your household from some 50 to 60,000 service requests. All that brush goes to the wood recycling center, and that's where it's ground up. We collect about, looks like our projection is about 25,000 tons of brush comparative to what we've done in the previous years. It's pretty consistent, and this just shows consistent revenues, tons, and number of service requests that we received year over year. You'll see it's a pretty significant increase in service requests from 2007 to 2018. Related to the app and the accessibility to 311, I believe we've experienced quite a few additional service requests, but similar tonnage and similar revenues from tipping fees that still are received from the Wood Recycle Center. I'd be happy to take any questions. There was also a question about the size of the grinder that the contractor uses. This is comparative. So the grinder that you see at the top is the same model that the operator, that our contractor uses from Ooltewah Grinding and Clearing, who was awarded the contract last year in this renewal of their contract in December. And you can see a similar model that we own at the bottom. And I'll be happy to take any questions about the contract renewal.
Councilman Henderson.
Justin, last week we passed basically on a contract renewal on this. Where does that put us? What effect does that have on us to be able to grind all this brush and wood and all that? So I noticed it's not on our purchase sheet again. I mean, it's not on for this week, so where are we at?
Well, we wanted to give the council an opportunity to field questions today, and if there were any additional questions, we deferred the item to be approved to present for approval for next week. So the item will be on purchases listed next week, but I wanted to give the council an opportunity to see the return on the investment from the alternative delivery service delivery, and also give you a chance to ask questions. Our contract does does expire in December. I don't have that date. We're anticipating it appearing on the council agenda though next week, and I hope to be able to answer any questions before then.
So if we don't renew that contract, it looks like to me that it could cost us in the neighborhood of roughly $500,000 if we're doing it ourselves, plus the cost of a grinder. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Gilbert.
Justin, on this contract, is that if we decide not to keep their services, do we have a 30-day that we can give them a notice to cancel it?
The termination clause was, okay. Well, I believe that the termination clause, sir, generally, generally is a 30-day notice without cause on most of our contracts, but I can get you the specific language from that contract. We tried to find it quickly between, I think, the strategic planning session and now, but I will make sure that you get that.
I'd like to have that way before we vote on it next week. Excuse me. How many employees did you have before the contract?
There were 6 full-time employees at the center. We now have 2 full-time employees, and the contractor employees, roughly the same amount of folks to do that same type of work. So
you said 6 starting out before we had the contract, and now we have 2, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
You okay?
Can I have one more? Can I have this presentation today or no later than tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
What you just gave a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. No pressure.
Okay. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Holland, on the heels of Councilman Gilbert's question, before employees left over from that were reassigned or were...
Yes, sir.
No one lost their jobs during this contract change?
That's correct, sir. Everyone was reassigned in their same job classification.
So nobody in the city lost their job?
That's correct,
With
sir.
this, but we are more efficient. The second question is, did we sell that grinder yet? Is it gone?
No, sir. The grinder's stored at Summit. We had advised the council that we would keep the grinder for 1 year to
1
make
year.
sure that there weren't any performance issues
Okay.
with the contractor, and we haven't seen any performance issues. So we do anticipate selling that. There is some depreciation that we're incurring by keeping it and
Sure.
maintaining it.
Absolutely. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Gilbert?
One more question. Do you, in your professional opinion, if the crew will stay there 5 days a week, play 8 hours a day, will we not have more actually done versus what we have now for the big piles of brush we have currently?
No, sir. So the volume of brush that we receive is cleared typically in a day or two from that contractor. It's not unusual for, it wouldn't have been unusual for us to operate similarly, where, you know, the grinder is over capacity for what we needed. And so we didn't have to run our grinder every day. They don't have to run theirs every day either. Typically, I think they run it a couple times a week, and we did the same thing. So
you're saying that if we have brush there, say on Monday, that same brush will be gone by Wednesday, correct? Is that what you just?
So I think the contractor moves in when there's enough brush to keep them busy to run the grinder. I don't know Monday to Wednesday. I couldn't give you a...
No, I thought you just said that you'll remove that brush in 2 days. What comes out there?
They grind approximately every 2 to 3 days. I'm sure they've gone longer, and we had to.
So the brush do stay out there for big piles over 1 or 2 days, correct? Most of the time or some of the time?
Some of the time.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Rashawn.
All right, I see no more questions. I guess we can go into resolutions now.
Mr. Council.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. We do have a really interesting item on tonight's purchases that I wanted to highlight for the council.
Okay.
Just briefly, we are contracting with River City Athletic Fields Company to rehabilitate some youth recreation fields. And there are 25 fields total. They're at Hickson Youth Athletic Association, Lakeside, Lookout Valley, and Rivermont to meet some Dizzy Dean baseball organization requirements. It basically reduces some safety issues with the infield lip to the outfield where those were drug. I think it also is laser grading, compacting fields, reestablishing infield edges, top dressing, resetting bases as needed, or base anchors as needed, and leaving all the additional material for the Youth Athletic Association to manage. There's several safety issues and playability issues that come along with the deferred maintenance of those fields. And I got a couple of photos that you can see of what those field conditions look like previously, and some of the problems that they experience at the athletic associations. And I don't think this is what the crew is going to be doing, but it's more something like this, a little more sophisticated with laser graded fields. So just wanted to highlight that for the council members. Some of you have these fields in your districts and would be of particular interest to you. And I don't have any additional presentation, sir.
So you're ready to go to resolutions now? All right. Would you please read 7F?
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 for Heron Construction Company, Inc. of Etowah, Tennessee, relative to contract number W15-009201, MBWWTP, control room upgrades, a consent decree project to include a new contingency in the amount of $100,000 for an increased amount of $216,245.75 for a revised contract amount of $1,780,245.75.
Councilman Gilbert, is this having to do with the last item? I looked up and saw your light right as I asked for that. So go.
Can I get that presentation on baseball fields too?
Yes, sir. It's all in one presentation. Sure.
All right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Seeing no questions about F, could you please read G?
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 final for Lane and Liner LLC of Tucker, Georgia, relative to contract number W12-021201, sanitary sewer rehabilitation of South Chickamauga Creek 5 sub-basin project, a consent decree project, to release the contingency amount of $250,000 for a decreased amount of $434,497.54 for a revised contract amount not to exceed $2,192,487.46.
Councilman Gilbert.
Justin, the contingency was, excuse me, 434,000, so now it's 250,000, correct? Before it went down?
Well, the contingency was $250,000. We didn't use any of the contingency in the total released amount. This is a final change order to release a total of $434,497.54. The revised final contract amount would have been $2,192,487.46.
So we say 250,000.
We say $434,497.54 from the budgeted total of that project, what we projected the project would cost us.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Please read H.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 final for Instituform Technologies LLC of LaVerge, Tennessee, relative to contract number W12-022201, sewer rehabilitation for South Chickamauga Creek, Subbasin 1, a consent decree project, to release the contingency amount of $100,000 for a decreased amount of $180,536.26 for a revised contract amount not to exceed $1,647,768.26.
Seeing no lights, aye, please.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number Y18-003201 to Tri-State Roofing Contractors, LLC of Chattanooga, Tennessee, replacement roofing system for South Chattanooga YFD Center Building in the amount of $294,344 with a contingency amount of $29,500 for an amount not to exceed $323,844.
J, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Artec Design Group, Inc. for professional services relative to contract number Y17-005101, East Lake YFD Center improvements for an amount not to exceed $147,960.
Okay, seeing no questions. K, please.
A resolution authorizing payment for Santec Environmental, Inc. annually for Bradley County landfill disposal of biosolid sludge and other special waste in the amount of $80,000.
Councilman Ledford.
Chairman, I'm going to probably regret this, but will you please explain to us what exactly is biosolid sludge and special waste?
I certainly can, sir. So biosolids are a byproduct of the wastewater treatment system, or wastewater treatment process. Mm-hmm. So the biosolids or biosludge is actually typically a cake dried mix, which is heated either by a centrifuge or by a filter press. That product generally comes out in a dry product and is land applied as a biosolid. So you've heard us talk about biosolids in the past as land applied biosolids. Sometimes that process doesn't work perfectly, and we need a way to dispose of those at Santec's landfill. They will do that for us. It's a tough product to get rid of. It's wet when it enters the landfill, and this requires a special waste permit from Santec. So we've got an arrangement with them now.
Very good. I knew my curiosity would get the best of me. So
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you please read L?
A resolution authorizing the administrator for Department of Public Works to enter into a blanket contract for professional services for the continuing on-call mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and engineering services contract number E18-009101 for the following 2 consultant firms, Campbell & Associates, Inc. and March Adams & Associates, Inc. for year 1 of a term up to 4 years, with this year's amount not to exceed $150,000.
All right, M, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into a blanket contract for professional services for the continuing on-call architectural services contract number E18-007101 for the following 6 consultant firms: Allen and Hoshall, Inc., Artec Design Group, Inc., Durthick, Henley, and Wilkerson Architects, PLLC, Franklin Architects, Rardin and Carroll Architects, Inc., and TWH Architects for a 1-year term up to 4 years with years amount not to exceed $250,000.
Are you basically saying here, we're giving out a 1-year contract, but it could go up to 4?
So the last 3 items, sir, L, M, and N, are all on-call professional services contracts to allow us to expedite resolution of either mechanical, I think it's structural, architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, engineering services. So what it allows us to do is tap the resources of these firms who have submitted to help us with some quick fixes. So the authorized amount for item L is $150,000. The authorized amount for item M is $250,000, and the authorized amount for N is $150,000. So that just means that we wouldn't be able to go over that authorized amount without coming back to the council, but it also allows us to select from a variety of consultants for which area they may specialize in.
So let me ask it a different way. You coming back for the money every year and keeping the same folks, or are you going to?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
That is correct. We're coming back to you to authorize that amount with these same contractors annually.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to next week. Would you please read 7M?
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement to increase the scope and amount of an existing contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. for professional services relative to the Water Quality Program rate study for a total amount not to exceed $469,984.
So, Mr. Council, Mr. Chairman, we have a presentation that we would like to go through now. This is at the request of the council from last year's budgeting process, where we were requesting rate increases for stormwater fees. The council asked us to investigate alternatives to how we measure and how we structure our rate for each of this each parcel in the city. We've developed what we believe is a scope that meets the council's request to investigate alternatives to water quality rates and how we structure those rates. So I have today Maria Price, our engineering manager in our water quality engineering program, and some of her team. I see Mo and Carr. She and Mo have been working on this presentation today, and we'll have a moment for some questions right after Maria runs through quite a bit of information for you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, let's see if I can get the clicker to work. There we go. All right. Well, Chattanooga's Water Quality Program manages surface water aspects within the city's limits in accordance with Chattanooga's state permit. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. This includes natural bodies of water such as streams, creeks, rivers, and stormwater runoff. Measures addressed in the city's permit include, but are not limited to, public outreach and education, participation and involvement, illicit discharge, detection and elimination, construction and post-construction site runoff control, and pollution prevention and good housekeeping. The water quality fee funds programs and positions whose purposes are to reduce and prevent pollution, provide guidance for construction and industrial activities, and control flooding through the construction and maintenance of stormwater infrastructure, such as roadways, curbs, inlets, pipes, ditches, water quality units, and detention facilities. A little project background. We had the current water quality program rate study wrapped up in April of this year, as you're aware, and the findings were presented to the Stormwater Regulations Board and City Council in May. The City Council adopted year 1 from the recommendation as part of the fiscal year 19 budget. During budget deliberations, as Justin mentioned, members of the council requested an analysis of the water quality rate structure to examine other methods of calculating the water quality fee and evaluate the fair and equitable distribution of the charges, particularly among residential parcels. And here we are today. With the additional project scope, we propose the analysis will compare and contrast 4 different stormwater fee methodologies using up to 10 different fee structures. The various rate structures are based on existing comparable programs in Tennessee and other regional areas. These methodologies include the equivalent residential unit, which is the current Chattanooga model, the C-factor rate structure, which is the previous Chattanooga model, the runoff unit, and various tiered rate structures. The ERU, measured impervious area, as I mentioned, is Chattanooga's current model and is currently the Lancaster, Ohio model. The C-factor, which is assumed impervious area, is the previous Chattanooga model. The runoff unit, which is the measured impervious area, is Gwinnett County. And a tiered residential and ERU impervious non-residential methodologies are used in Griffin, Georgia, Durham, North Carolina, Memphis, Franklin, Nashville, and Cleveland, Tennessee. And here we have 2 examples. These houses both have comparable living area. One is 1,498 square feet and the other is 1,489 square feet. But as you can see, well, it's not real evident in this picture. In this picture, we have superimposed the smaller lot inside of the larger lot. So you can see the smaller one is only 5,120 square feet. That's listed as house 1, the small parcel. And then the other one is 48,787. These both are residential units, so they're charged the same water quality fee, even though they are different. The impervious area differences, the house 1 is 5,875 square feet, which is the larger lot. The houses are the same size, but they have a lot more drive and parking areas. The impervious area of the second house is only 2,997 square feet. So it's basically half the size of the other, although they're getting charged the same amount. And we put up here the estimated market value as well, because that was one comment. House 1, which is the larger one, is only estimated at $164,000, and then the smaller lot is $270,000. And as far as our stormwater fee initial and annual cost for running the program, the initial methodology conversion back in 2010, we had aerial photography, which was $215,000. The rate conversion itself was $750,000, so the total cost to the city was $965,000. Our ongoing annual cost for this program for the satellite imagery is $10,000. The indirect treasury cost for actually providing the billing aspect is $78,687. There's a lot of staff time involved. We have a staff member who spends about 15 hours annually, which equates to about $34,000, doing an analysis of the properties and updates as we have more development come into our city. Another staff member handles our credits and exemptions and the appeals. So our ongoing annual cost to run the program is $132,353. We have some past due, uncollected water quality fees. As you can see here, it's gone up, as has development. We average probably about $1 million a year in unrecouped fees. And here's the breakdown based on type. About half of those fees are government, that Hamilton County, City of Chattanooga, and federal and state. And you can see here the residential part makes up about $23,000 total here. The government part, including interest, is $4,900,000, and that's of uncollected past due and interest. And the cost of deliverables with this additional scope for this program to do this analysis, the comparison data and final reports to be completed within 15 weeks of the notice to proceed. The timing allows for review and evaluation of the findings in advance of the fiscal year 20 budget. The original contract amount was $364,694. This particular scope of work change order would be an additional $105,290, bringing the grand total to $469,964. Are there any questions?
Councilperson Burrs.
So, simple question first. Why do we need to raise water quality fees?
Do you want to tell you?
Sure.
And I've got several follow-ups.
So, Councilwoman, good question. So we presented last budget year the need for water quality fees to be increased. With our 5-year capital plan and operating expenditures bumping against revenues, we hired a consultant, HDR, to develop a rate structure that would match our capital needs and our operating
For 5 years.
For 5 years. So that's the reason that we need to raise water quality fees, is because operating expenses were really close to our revenues. So this is a little bit, not to your question, but this rate study, how we collect fees and how we bill those fees is a little bit different. And why do we need to do this? It really, I think, from the council, it was a question about how fair are the rates being assessed, and are there other ways? And so we, in our scope with HDR, our previous contractor, in a change order, we've decided to, we've developed a scope and have a relatively close assessment of what that fee would be to come back to the council with alternatives.
Okay, so if you would back up, please, to the uncollected fees, the part with the uncollected fees. Actually, if you go a little further back, here's what occurs to me. You went through all the stuff we've already done, and we went through a lot to come up with the way we do things now. Are we just repeating that process again?
So it would be a repeat of a process that was previously established to create how our rates are structured. The council asked us during last year's budget.
No, I remember that. I chaired the budget committee, and their questions were good questions. I'm not talking about the questions. I'm trying to figure out why we have to pay $500,000 to repeat what we've already done if we already have all the information. It looks like we're going to repeat what we already did. If you go even further back, we talked about comparing how various different places do it. All right, you can go back where you talk about, keep going forward. All right, so at some point, we did a pretty comprehensive study looking at all these various ways of doing things and made the decision on a way of doing it, and decided for whatever reasons that was the best decision. What is this new data you're going to be coming up with? The principles remain the same. That's going to cost $500,000. Yeah, let me put a period there.
So first off, to answer one question, the change order is for $105,000. The implementation, which Maria reviewed, is so we're looking back at what we previously did. Our initial methodology for the implementation of something like this is aerial photography conversion.
Mm-hmm.
The total conversion previously was $965,000. We don't know what, first of all, we do feel confident that our rate is structured appropriately. We were asked to scope a rate fee analysis to look at alternatives. So we've done that. That cost is about $105,000. The implementation cost, if we decide, we could decide that we're doing it the best we can, that the way that we're doing it is fair and equitable, and it meets all the requirements that the council wants. The alternative is that we find a better solution. We do feel like the rate structure that we have now is fair and equitable. We feel like we know that there are other ways to assess that fee, and Maria has reviewed those. And I think that helps answer your question. Why would we look at it? Because we were asked to look at it.
Actually, my question was, what, in spending this money, what are you going to do differently or new? It is what it is. I'm just trying to figure out. The council's question was a good one. Can we do it better? Can we do it differently? It looks like we've already looked at all the differentlys.
I think what the consultant would do is further analyze some. If you go back to Maria, if you go back to some of the other cities, you can see a number of ways that there's an ERU measurement, C factor runoff, and a tiered measurement using an ERU as well. There are a number of ways that you can.
Did we not already look at all of these?
I'd have to go back and look at what happened in early 2010. I believe when the last fee was assessed, or the last rate structure was established. And I apologize, Bill Payne could not be here today, who has probably the most historical information about this, institutional knowledge. So I'd have to go back and look to see if this was actually, if all of these things were investigated. But a change order would be proposed next week for your approval, if you'd like to do that.
I would like to know, when it's proposed, for my approval at least, what is missing that hasn't been looked at? I mean, I get it. A house that's got 5,000 square feet and it's 2-story is going to have less impervious than one that's older and ranch style. I get that, all right? I'm just simply asking, to spend any money, what else are we going to be looking at that is any different than what we've already looked at?
I think that's what our consultant would tell us. There are a number of ways that you can evaluate the fee or assess the fee, and we're asking if the council would like for us to.
They said they did.
Create a change order. We scoped that change order. We've applied what we feel like is the assessed cost for that change order for our consultant to come back and look at additional units or assessed.
Is that, and what would that be? That extra $100 and something thousand?
So what's going to be, what is on the agenda for next week is a change order for $105,000.
For them to look at something that obviously isn't here that we haven't done.
Well, we would ask them to look at other ways that cities, municipalities assess stormwater fees. And are there any other alternatives?
Okay. And you're saying that's something we haven't already done?
Saying that we haven't done it since 2010.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maria, can we talk a little bit about the uncollectible fees? That grabbed my attention. You said we have about $1 million a year in uncollectible, and we're currently at $4 million. I'll give you a second to catch up.
Our total uncollected, let's see, fees and interest is $9,568,043.31.
Okay, hang on, back up. I'm a small business owner. That would crush me.
And as you can
if
see,
I couldn't collect.
Here, about half of that is from government entities.
Unpaid from the government?
Unpaid from the government. Most of that is Hamilton County, but that does include UTC and the federal government.
And how old is this debt?
Since 2010. This is from 2010 to 2017.
Okay, you can probably figure out where I'm going next. Again, as a small business owner, what measures are we taking? Because when I see that kind of debt, I think that's being passed on to ratepayers. I mean, that's the way it works in business. I know that's just the way it goes. We all pay that. We all end up paying that, whatever we buy. So what measures are we doing right now? And I see Mr. Holland about to approach the bench, so to speak. So Justin, what are we doing to try to reclaim that?
So we work with our Treasury Department and Finance to recover. The Treasury's office part of their job is to bill and collect those fees. So after the bills are sent to ratepayers, there are some mechanisms to collect on debt, and I would ask Finance to give another opportunity to present how they collect that debt.
Okay, I would be really, really interested to see a follow-up on this. I won't hold you to any more answers on this right now, but I think it's important that if we're not collecting what's owed to us, so to speak, then that has a detrimental impact on how the fees that we have to charge, and I mean that's crazy amount of money.
I think there are, and I don't see Davey or Finance here to answer this, but I think there are mechanisms to collect on debt. I just would have to yield to them on
Sure.
what those
Completely understand. I just want to point that out, that when we see that kind of money, I mean, in my business, we get on the phone, we start sending nice emails, we do something with past due accounts. And I think I would love to see that same application. I'm getting a head shake from Maura that you agree that we've got to do the same thing, and we've got to be more diligent. So I want to propose the challenge. If this council can help you do something like that, then let's please look at that, because that's a lot of money that's out there.
Thank you. We'll get with Finance and Treasurer's Office and update you on what we do currently and if there's any other avenues.
Okay, and my last point, Mr. Chairman, is to follow up on Councilwoman Burza's question. I think this $105,000 change order is really what the council had asked to basically come through and present a different rate program. And with that, the consultant would provide to us what that plan would implement cost-wise, whether it's an increase or a decrease. Is that correct? On a yearly operation?
So we'll get back to you on whether that's in the
Sure.
scope or not. I apologize.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's a pretty in-depth question, reaching into the consultant's role.
Just to add to that, the consultant could come back and tell us that we are doing it the best way
For us.
Right?
Okay, very good.
I did have a follow-up for your question, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The original study did not compare the specific cities. That's one reason why we were asked to do more analysis as far as what they looked at to see how we compared as far as what we were charging. And the main reason why the consultant recommended we stick with the ERU structure that we have is because it was legally defensible. And the other structures have not been taken through the court system and defended. So that was part of the reasoning that the consultant gave for why we should use the system that is currently in place.
Councilman Gilbert.
This question for our lawyer, Mr. Field. I know at one time we was at council a while back, we had to pay back some taxes on liquor taxes, if I'm not mistaken, or something we had to pay back to the county. What legal grounds do we have to get this money back?
Well, if there is an improper payment to the county, then that would be one issue. I guess the issue, are you referring to it here as to the stormwater costs that they have as well? Or?
You said $9 million total?
Mm-hmm.
What legal grounds do we have to get that money back?
Well, I think this is 51.3% of the $9.4 million we were talking about on there. And the problem that you have in connection with collection of stormwater fees is it is not a tax. It is a fee under state law, and federal law is the only reason we're able to charge that fee. And that's one of the reasons they're looking at these ERUs as being the proper method of collection of that fee. If we were dealing with this as a tax, there would probably be more ability to be able to collect on it a little bit easier. Right now, these governmental entities, if they don't pay through collection, then you're forcing yourselves into a suit situation here with these bodies. And there's also statutes of limitations that run on the collection of those fees over a certain period of time.
So in other words, we're going to hurry up
Yes,
and
sir.
look into this.
Yes, sir.
All right.
You okay?
Yep.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin, Mr. Holland, go back to the, I guess, the slide that shows the 4 different rate structures. So it looks like we're going to rehash or look at 4 different structures. Is that correct in this 104,000? Which it was, and maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, I don't know, but in our Budget and Finance Committee meetings, I thought the question was, why can't we implement a tiered system that's a more equitable, that's the word that I kept hearing in our rate study was equitable. An equitable way of doing this, a more equitable way of, if you got 1,000 square feet, you pay for 1,000 square feet. If you got 4,000 square feet, you pay for 4. If this many cities, 6 cities, and 4 of them's in Tennessee, I thought I heard you say ours has been tested in court. You mean to tell me that none of these cities have ever been tested in court on their tiered system?
Oh, I didn't say that, sir.
Oh,
I don't.
no, I didn't
think
know.
we said
I don't
they
think you
had-
did, but I thought I heard.
One of the reasons the consultant gave for this, the recommendation that they made was that it was proven to be legally defensible, and they had said that they had found that the others were not. I don't know for sure if any of these have gone to trial to see if they were, but that's just information from our consultant from our original study.
So I guess my question, Mr. Holland, was, I mean, I thought this council, pretty much everybody on this council was interested in looking at a tiered system. I don't know why we would go back and look at a C factor, because we know that is not defensible in court. I'd throw that one out. I don't know why we would look at it. The runoff unit would actually probably really be expensive to implement, because you've got to go out and physically measure everybody's. I'd throw that one out. I mean, can we not throw all of these out? I mean, we already know our ERU measurement. I mean, really, I thought all we were looking at is just the tiered residential system.
I think in a broader sense, the scope was written to look at the most equitable, the most fair, and the most legally defensible process. I'd like to
Well,
yield
let's
to
just compare the tiered to the ERU then.
Let me yield
Would
to
that-
Dr. Benkar, who also has extensive knowledge about this slide in particular.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what Maria was saying is correct, and I was a project manager when we did the previous study 10 years ago, and I remember that's the reason we chose the current method, because it has been tested in court and it's defensible. The tier approach was developed after most of them were developed after our method, so those municipalities have adopted the tier approach recently. And as far as my knowledge, I don't think this has been tested in court yet. This doesn't mean they may not be. They may be tested in the future, or they may not be tested in the future. But ours for sure has been tested, and it's proof.
Well, do you
It's
have a
defensible.
theory as to why, I mean, if these were passed recently, and I'm going to go out on a limb and assume something here, and I know that's dangerous.
Right.
They must have looked at the way we did it, our ERU measurement, and chose this direction, if they've done it since we've implemented our ERU.
Right.
So they must have had some warm and fuzzy feeling, thinking that this would stand up in court even, and it was a more equitable way of doing than the ERU. Would you agree with that or not?
I wouldn't say for sure that it will stand in court, because it hasn't been tested yet. Until it's tested, then we can say it did or not stand in court. I think that's what that's what our conversation with the consultant have.
Well, it seems like there's way more cities doing the tiered system than the ERU system. Is that
I'm not
correct,
su-
Justin?
I'm I'm not sure. I don't think, we can look up the statistics, but I don't believe it is true.
I think that's represented in this slide. I'm not sure that that's a statistic across the country, or anywhere else, but it is represented here in this slide as more cities having a tiered system. Like I said, the change order is to investigate the best way for us to
Well, let me, okay, so let me ask you this. Could we get that change order down or reduced if we threw out the C factor and the runoff unit? I'm almost certain that there's no one on this council that would be interested in looking at those two.
Okay. So we can look at narrowing the scope. If the council's desire is just to look at whether or not a tiered fee structure is better or legally defensible, I believe we can come back and let me stop that and come back and let you know if we can narrow the scope, and we'll be happy to present again.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how you would want to proceed with this, but that certainly would be my intentions, to just look at the tiered system versus the ERU. I don't know how anybody else on this council feels, but
Can you hold that question for a second? I got a couple of more.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. I had one other follow-up question, back to fees. The city attorney, this might be a question for Phil. Because it's a fee, Mr. Attorney,
Yes, sir.
can the city place liens on properties for unpaid water quality fees?
We clearly have that authority for taxes. We could place a lien on the property. I believe if it's an unpaid bill, if we got a judgment, there's a question about how that works in that regard. We have provided the service to that area. It's a possibility we could do a municipal lien.
Okay, so this could come down to something we are talking about a lot around the table, and that is our enforcement.
Yes.
Rights, so to speak, and fees. You're saying that so we can't put a lien on UTC. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we could put a lien. I guess the question would be, what repercussions would you get when you did that?
I understand.
Yes.
Okay, very good. That was for those reporting. That was a funny. Okay, I'm not going after UTC. That's my alma mater. Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Attorney. That answered that question.
Yes, sir.
Councilperson Burrs.
So my question, I had two comments. One went along with what Councilman Ledford just said. If we're really not going to pursue it, then those are illusory debts. And we need to just move on and not count them as anything that's going to help us out, whether that's right or wrong. To put up graphs for all these millions of dollars that are uncollected, but the fact is we've made some sort of decision not to collect because we're not going to put a lien on UTC or the county or whatever, then it's illusory to even have them there. I mean, it's a pretty chart, but it's not money that's ever going to come in. And so it gives us an idea of what the true need is relative to the 5 years. Because the fact is, it probably is illusory. Mm-hmm. So, so then you're back to what is the need for the next 5 years for your long-range plan, and where do we fall short? And what is if you do a cost-benefit analysis, and I know that's my usual word, guys, but I think that's how you have to look at things. If you do a cost-benefit analysis, are we going to be spending more money trying to change things than what we're going to reap? Do you understand what I'm saying? The other thing is I agree with my colleague, Councilman Henderson. I'm not sure why we would look at things that we don't want to look at anyway. And we can always change the scope of work. We're paying, there would be any problem with us going to our consultants for it. a lot of money off of us anyway. I'm trying to figure out why in the world they would even say, well, that's going to cost $100,000 when they did all of this to begin with, but I'll leave that up to you all. However, of course we can change the scope. We haven't let the contract yet. And I agree that what we need to be doing is, if we want to look at a tiered system, and I would like to look at the legal ramifications, because, and I'll tell you where they're going to come from. They're going to come from being discriminatory, because the older properties are more ranch style and spread out. Newer properties go up vertically. So in this city, perhaps the more affluent people will be paying lower taxes because of design. And I could see that's where challenges might come from. So I'm thinking that what I would like to do, Mr. Chair, is when you're ready, entertain a motion to go along with Councilman Henderson's concerns. Yeah, I see no one else in the queue, so if Councilman would, or I'll make it for him, we need to go get rid of that scope.
Yeah, would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
Sure.
I think you just did, didn't you?
I think I just did, sir. I'm looking for a second. I got one.
We have a motion and a second to, are we saying change the scope or shrink the scope? What are we saying exactly? Limit it?
I'm saying limit the scope to looking at that one thing.
The tiered.
And of course we can do it. We're paying for it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to limit the scope to just researching the tiered structure. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, procedurally, we'd just like an opportunity to staff this, come back to you with the scope that you've described here today. We're happy to do that. Give us some time. We may have to defer the item, but I'll be in touch next Tuesday to advise whether or not we need to defer the item to redefine the scope.
I think you're going to defer. I think we're going to defer the item.
Request to defer, yes, sir.
Yes, okay. All right. That sounds great. One more thing I'd like to say about this before we move on to transportation, just to get back into history a little bit. I'm the one that probably complained the most about this being inequitable. And in my opinion, it was recessive. And in my opinion is, while there are dangers in a tiered system, and possibly they haven't been tested, possibly they have somewhere by now, I know that charging everybody the same residentially is totally inequitable. And I'll argue that to my grave. And in a couple of years, we're all going to be judged on what we did about inequity, not what we said about inequity. And I think that we need to move in that direction. And thank you all for your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You did great. Thank you. Congratulations to all the award winners, too. Mr. Bailey.
Mr. Chairman.
How you doing?
I'm well.
Hope you found all that fascinating.
I did.
Very well, very well. You got any special presentations or awards or anything?
No, sir.
You don't? Okay, that's all right. I think we're going to start. You don't have anything today. I believe it's next week?
Yes, sir.
All right. Please read 7N on the 20th.
A resolution authorizing Wood E&I Solutions, Inc., care of Martha Woods, on behalf of property owner Bob Witzel, to use temporarily the right-of-way located along the Madison Street Road frontage of 700 East Main Street for the purpose of installing a fence as shown on the maps attached hereto and made a part hereof by reference, subject to certain conditions.
Okay. O, please.
A resolution authorizing Herbie Dixon, property owner, to use temporarily the right-of-way located along the alley between 1701 and 1703 Lynbrook Avenue and 1700 Block and 1702 South Hotz Orange Street for the purpose of public access as shown on the maps attached hereto and made a part hereof by reference, subject to certain conditions.
Okay. Okay, good. P.
A resolution authorizing TSO Chattanooga Development LP, care of A. Boyd Simpson, property owner, a temporary encroachment into the right-of-way located along the rear of 728 Market Street, as shown on the maps attached here to and made a part hereof by reference, subject to certain conditions.
All right, Q.
A resolution authorizing WGC Inc., care of Mike Wall, on behalf of property owner Cuck Pruitt, to use temporarily the right-of-way located along the sidewalk area of 501 Cherokee Boulevard for the purpose of installing exterior restaurant seating, as shown on the maps attached hereto, and made a part hereof by reference, subject to certain conditions.
Councilman Henderson.
Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. I apologize, I didn't look at the map. We're not running tables out on the sidewalk, are we?
Yes, sir, we are.
We are?
Yes, sir. Just a procedural correction. There was a missing H in the individual's name.
I'm
It's
sorry?
It's Chuck in,
Yeah.
in the resolution description. The name is Chuck, just for the record.
Yeah.
The name was misprinted on the resolution. Sorry, it's not addressing your question. I just wanted to make sure that
Okay,
it's
yeah,
correct in the
I-
name. This is a temporary use, so it's a non-permanent permit application that allows them to use the sidewalk. We assure that there's pedestrian passage that's adequate anytime we do this. So that is what this is for, is to provide outdoor dining on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I get
Outside
that, but
the
I just want to make sure that we're not impeding sidewalk pedestrian use. In the other question, I guess I had, and we sort of ran into a little, well, maybe not a problem, but we permitted a temporary use a couple of years ago for even a deck out over
Yes, sir.
a right-of-way, and then we had to come back and reclaim that. Is there any sunset clause, or what's the procedure for reclaiming or to, I guess, taking away that
There's a
temporary use?
I'm glad you raised that issue. We've not done any temporary uses like the one that you're referring to since that happened, that are, let's say, what I would say are more permanent
Yeah.
structures with concrete footings in the ground. And there's an existing sidewalk. This is fairly common. Excuse me. It's an existing sidewalk, so there won't be any permanent construction except for a rail, and the rail is usually just there to meet the requirements of the agencies that allow them to serve alcohol on the sidewalk. So that's the only thing that is anything close to not movable. The rest of it's tables and chairs. To answer your question about, we have a process for revocation. We've done 3 or 4 revocations to this body, and typically when we do a revocation, we bring it to this body just to assure that we're in the right spot. There's not a sunset clause. These are non-permanent, but there's not an expiration date. And especially in the case of these restaurants, they plan to use the sidewalk, and generally we think that's a good thing to have people on the sidewalks. Makes the sidewalk feel safer when there's people on it. So we don't see a need to provide an expiration date.
Okay.
And also your first question, because we do these, there's boilerplate language that assures that accessibility is maintained, and bullet number 2 indicates that that anything that they put in the right-of-way must comply with ADA standards and minimum clearances for pedestrian traffic within the right-of-way, which typically, I think we require at least 5 feet on our sidewalks for clearance, sometimes more than that, depending on the amount of pedestrian traffic that's there.
So if we had complaints or some problems, we could either go out, I mean, we've got enough in the language that we could enforce.
I believe absolutely, Mr. Chairman. There's the indemnity language that's on the item 3. The temporary user shall vacate the property and temporary use upon 30 days' notice from the city to do so. So if there's anything that's a problem, we can send a notification that they need to vacate it within 30 days.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
All right. Anything else for Public Works and Transportation today? Seeing no lights, Councilman Ledford, do you have a little something you want to talk about in planning and zoning?
I think that's yes.
We're adjourned. Next.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of our Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. Can I get approval of our minutes from our last meeting? Thank you. Very good. Before we begin, Mr. Bridger, I know you're around here somewhere. Here, I'm president accounted for. I wanted to read something to kind of open up to try to further explain what we are trying to accomplish. Recently, we held a public hearing on and asked for input from the public and stakeholders and anybody who wanted to voice their concern regarding steep slope and floodplain development within the city limits of Chattanooga. Prior to this public meeting, stakeholders in the community were also asked to participate with comments, suggestions, and concerns. It was interesting. I was asked this Saturday at the Housing Connections Conference, why is this important and why now? And that was a great question, and partly answered in my opening statements prior to last week's public hearing on this subject. In short, this is important because we have a lack of clear expectations. We have no measurable criteria or standards to evaluate rezoning requests when it comes to steep slopes and floodplains. 83% of rezoning requests from 2013 to 2018, 83% of these cases, close to 600, is that right, Mr. Bridger, were for steep slopes or floodplains or both. And the third point that has been very important to me since I ran for City Council was that I realized that after May 15th, 2015, cities in Tennessee can no longer annex property without a referendum or by owner consent. This is important, and I stress this again, on how we develop and how we redevelop within our boundaries while maintaining and serving the needs of a growing population. It is essential that we be responsible in future developments and stronger stewards of the land that we have left. So let me also remind you in those opening statements that our future action is not intended to hinder or cause complications for developers or home builders, but to set forth clarity in standards and define expectations. This council recognizes the need for more housing opportunities and choices, and this process will include citizens, developers, home builders, city planners, and any other concerned persons who may have helpful and useful information. In short, this is a collaborative effort in which I thank this council and the staff of RPA and LDO for its support as we journey to understand options and best use practices for generations to come. I couldn't agree more with Councilman Mitchell just a moment ago when he made a similar statement. I believe everyone on this council believes in leaving things better than they found it. And that's why this endeavor is so important. There's no better time than now when our city is experiencing economic growth and innovation is at the forefront of almost every conversation. Communication will be key, and every opinion will be considered as we move through a very transparent and thorough process. So with that being said, I would like to ask Mr. Bridger to come to the microphone and present us with an update from the public hearing.
Yes, well, actually,
and also and go over the resolution that has been drafted.
On the resolution itself. You had asked staff to kind of develop some language, and I worked with the city attorney's office and LDO to craft some language for an interim regulations until we develop a long-term solution. And that's what we've done. And Phil, I don't know if you have, I do have, if I could put the screen, smell on the screen. Everybody there? November 13th and pull up. I do have a synopsis of those provisions, and I include that change in the floodplain. You saw
okay, to floodplain.
Yeah.
Good.
While that's coming up, I'll at least give you some highlights, and then as it catches up, we'll put it on the screen. I think the first thing was, as I understand, again, the direction we see from council was to develop some kind of interim regulations that would deal with the interim slide floodplain, that PDF, the third one from the left, interim slope. That one, thank you. The first question was kind of how, if that's what you're desiring, and it would affect, looking at steep slopes and floodplains. First question we talked with staff about was, again, what would be the vehicle for doing that? I got this wrong. Can you close that out, please? Oh.
So John, while you're searching for
Okay.
that, are you almost there?
I'm just going to give the highlights from, and then you can follow me along, I hope, pretty well.
Okay.
One was basically we learned that it was best to do that through the stormwater permitting process because it's set up to deal with when you're typically looking at grading or filling. So that's the part of city code that this amendment would focus on. And again, I do emphasize that this would be an interim resolution that would sunset on May 1st, 2019. And again, the two key items of that would be looking at the steep slopes. It would basically state that no more than 20% of a steep slope on any development property defined as having a vertical rise divided by the horizontal run that exceeds 0.33 shall be graded or clear. So if you have, let's say if you got 100 acres on a property and you've got 5 acres that are steep slopes that meet that slope definition, then only 20% of that 5 acres can be graded. That was how that rule would be applied. The other regarding floodplain would state simply that no more than 50% of the floodplain on any development property. If we could move forward a couple slides, that'd be great. Thank you. Right, back one more, please. There you go. Thank you. No more than 50% of a floodplain on any development property as defined in division, you can see the division section of the code, shall be filled or cleared. And again, those are pretty typical from what you've seen. Again, we looked at Knoxville, or particularly Nashville, and then the 50% fill is something that both Knoxville and Nashville do. So as far as a baseline, that's pretty comparable to what those cities are doing. Go to the next slide, please. I think this one came particularly in talking with some of the LDO staff. There have been some concerns about like a residential dwelling going up prior to a retaining wall being installed, and felt there's a need for some language to be clear about that. If you have a steep slope that you've graded on and you've got a retaining wall that's required, it has to be installed prior to commencement of building construction. And then you see the last part of it would say that these would not apply to existing properties with vested property rights. And Phil, you can help those folks understand what that means.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, why don't you do that?
Oh, yeah. We currently, under the code, and it's actually 3835 of the city code, and Tennessee Code Annotated 13.3.413 and 13.4.310 make provisions for when a site plan becomes, offers vested rights. And normally that has to be something that has been approved by the planning agency or the planning commission here in connection with a development site plan. And if it's not been approved in that regard, then there would not be vested rights under state law.
Okay. So I think, I'm sure you'll hear some, I think what I would urge you in terms of caution and thinking about this, because I know there's a desire to kind of at least protect properties until we develop a long-term tool. I think also be mindful that folks are in the middle of projects, and so how this affects somebody who's in midstream or the second or third quarter of a project, how that affect that. So I think that's something to think about, I think, before we decide to move forward with this.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, John. I mean, that is not our intent at all, is to curtail or to cause complexity for anything that's in the works. Our job and our mission is to create something and to find a balance. I mean, we do not have anything, and other cities have and have in action already since 5 to 7 years ago.
Yep.
So I think what we're doing is in the spirit of creating balance for developers and our city and its citizens. So please don't think that we are taking any kind of aggressive action, and we are here to discuss
Yeah.
the resolution that that is put before us. I do want to note on your screen, it's 38-35, for those of you who are following along on the screen, is our vested property rights section, not 45. That section is reserved. And I'm going to go ahead and, at this time, I have been asked to hear a few moments from stakeholders from home builders, and I'm going to ask the council, would you like to hear that presentation or those comments now for questions, or would you like to go to questions? And very good. If everyone is okay with that. It was asked to me, and then I mentioned earlier that this process is transparent, and I want it to be thorough, and I want to hear as many opinions as possible. So I was asked for some time during this committee meeting to make a presentation by the home builders. And if they are prepared and ready, I think it's Mr. Bennett. Are you here? Yes, sir. Are you ready? Yes. Okay. And we agreed on a time, so I'm going to hit my timer. And are you ready to go?
Yes, I am, and I'll try to be uncharacteristically brief.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that very much, but we do want to hear what you have to say.
For the record, my name is Barry Bennett, and I'm here representing the Home Builders Association of Greater Chattanooga. And do, on behalf of the home builders, want to thank you very much for your consideration in allowing us to speak before you this afternoon. Before getting started, I would like to recognize those members of the building industry that are present here today. If you could just raise your hands. And they're here primarily just to show their support for not approving an amendment or resolution at this time, which could possibly result in a de facto moratorium on development in the Chattanooga area. I like that term de facto. Phil Nobbett taught me that about 30 years ago. But if I may, and I do have a copy of this statement for the stenographer, but if I could read a statement into the record on behalf of the Home Builders Association. The members of the Home Builders Association of Greater Chattanooga are proud residents of the Chattanooga area and have had a long-term commitment to work with elected officials and others in common efforts to maintain and continue to improve the communities in which we all live. It is our mission to do this while striving to keep affordable housing for the largest possible spectrum of current and potential residents of our city. A major challenge in accomplishing this affordability goal is the continuous implementation of new government regulations which have a negative effect on the price of housing. Professional studies that are based on the Chattanooga area median household income show that over 500 households are priced out of their ability to purchase a new home for every $1,000 increase in price. The Administrator of Economic and Community Development for the City of Chattanooga, Donna Williams, recently stated that, and quoting her, the last thing that they wanted to do is put in more regulations. They just need to do a better job of enforcing the present regulations. The negative impact on affordability is especially and significantly increased when regulations are implemented in the form of a moratorium. The current proposal on steep slope slash floodplains will have the practical effect of a moratorium on new developers currently in the design and engineering stages, and they would have to go on hold until final regulations were enacted to ensure their projects would be feasible. In many cases, they have purchased land at prices that would make their development of the land that they purchase under the current regulations not financially feasible for development under the new proposed restrictions, or cause significantly higher costs, which translates to higher home prices. In most cases, in addition to the investment in the land, they have invested thousands of dollars in pre-development expenses. Many of the developers who were prepared to purchase land for development would be forced to defer their purchases, which would slow the number of available lots for new homes, which would also drive up housing prices. This short notice of new, more strenuous regulations without considerably more vetting is not a reasonable, fair, or responsible approach to take. The City of Chattanooga already has a shortage of developed lots ready for new home construction. This new proposal limits new home availability and results in driving up the prices of the limited number of new homes that are available. Not only will this proposed change increase housing prices, it would have a negative impact on the thousands of local employees our industry supports both directly and indirectly. It also has the potential to limit the substantial contributions the housing industry makes in property taxes and sales tax revenues that help support the many services the city of Chattanooga provides. The current proposal also implements arbitrary restrictions before a thorough review and stakeholder process can take place. We don't feel this issue has been thoroughly vetted. We are not opposed to a review of these issues that have been raised, and we are prepared to work in a partnership with you and other stakeholders to reach a balanced determination regarding the issues that have been presented. We're respectfully requesting that our concerns be taken into consideration by not instituting a moratorium that will contribute to the escalating home affordability problem, and accept our sincere offer to work in partnership with you and others to reach a balanced and effective outcome on the issues before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Price has some follow-up comments to make, if he's allowed.
If it's okay, I'd allowed an exception for the home builders to present their comments, and for the record, I will have to probably strongly ask that we not turn this into a public hearing.
It's not, but I'm been asked on behalf of the home builders.
So you can see where my colleagues are going, Mr. Price. This was not designed to be a back and forth today. This was we would love to hear what you have to say, and we will get this in written format, I know as well, for us to study. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price, for your cooperation. And thank you for coming, Mr. Bennett. I have some lights on, so we will move on to Councilman Mitchell.
Yeah, I need a little help with this proposed resolution here. It's, John, at first, you said this should flow through stormwater, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
This last sentence, you know, when it talks about if they have, or actually, I guess it was what Phil said about vested property rights.
Yes.
That planning has approved. That, to me, sounds like a subdivision. Are we just talking about subdivisions here?
Actually, that section talks about if you've ever approved a preliminary subdivision plat or a final subdivision plat or any final plat that has been approved by the planning agency on their planning commission. So it actually goes through the stages of looking at planned unit developments. It goes through the references to a subdivision plat that may be on file for an area. Any mixed-use zone, open space subdivision options, we put a whole group of areas that were included on what would be allowing vested property rights to start.
So we're talking about any steep slopes that has already gone through some form of zoning process is not even a part of this.
I think I would add, just make sure I'm not missing one, would be if you had a land disturbing permit, we already filed a plan that was approved showing a concept for a land disturbing permit that was approved.
Right.
That would also be included, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help you, Councilman?
We'll see.
Very good. Councilman Henderson, I see your light.
John, can you come back up? I've had a conversation with several couple of engineers that had some questions about the area, I guess, of steep slopes. Not all of your property may be contiguous. The steep slopes may not be contiguous. Is that, so is the 20% that we're, well, yeah, the 20%, is 100% of it every steep slope on the property? You understand what I'm asking?
My understanding, this is
as opposed to pockets of steep slopes.
Yeah, to confirm this part.
I just wanted to be
my understanding
clear.
is the way that would take place is you'd have to, like you do with a land disturbing permit, you would need to, you have some kind of a plan that shows your topo. I'm assuming that's part of the engineering. And then based on that plan that's submitted, you would identify all the areas that are basically 30%, 33% grade or higher. And then you would calculate that total area is, right, on your site plan. So once you've got that number, which is in square feet or acres, you would be limited to disturbing 20% total on that site of that steep slope area. Is that correct?
Yes. And I think you mentioned contiguous, as John said earlier. If you had 100 acres and you had 5 acres, you had 5 separate acre, you could decide 20% of that is a total. You know, do you want to do 20% of each acre, or do you want to clear 1 acre and leave the other 4 alone? That's how I understand that.
So it would be the total
It would be the total
area
of the steep
of
slope.
the
All
0.33%.
the area that's over 33%, you could disturb 20 of that.
Okay.
That's my interpretation.
And,
The rest of it that's not steep slope would be just subject to the regulations.
and I'm just asking this question now because the retaining walls are in here, the retaining wall requirement. Do we also need to include then a geotechnical engineering design if we're going to include that in
We
this
will, I mean, in
resolution?
the steep slopes, there's already the requirement in.
So that's already a requirement?
Yeah, what this would do was if you're going to use a retaining wall to stabilize your steep slope, you got to build that retaining wall, because we've had a couple instances where they come back and say, I can't build the wall now because the house was in the way. So now the person's sitting there with a vertical slope behind their house, and everybody's saying it can't be done. That's what we've run into in the past.
All right, thank you.
Good, Councilman? Yeah. Councilman Gilbert, see your light?
Yes, the man that spoke for home builders. Can you come up for a minute?
Yes, sir.
I know you said about the finance going to be passed on to whoever purchased the house, but how would it affect a small business person that has a construction company? For us, if we pass something like this.
Anyone involved in the home building industry is going to be impacted. I think especially construction companies, building material providers. If building for any reason is halted or slowed down, then not only are building employees, construction workers, going to be impacted by lack of job opportunities, but the construction companies, the building material suppliers, lumber companies are all going to be impacted because their businesses, their livelihood absolutely depends on the trade received from home builders. That's where most of their products go to.
And when it comes to affordable housing, I know a lot of times we have had several meetings on affordable housing that we don't have enough. How will that impact on affordable housing? 'Cause I know in some areas, say in the Brainerd area, I know there's a lot of steep slopes. How would that affect
All
these areas?
housing would be impacted by overly strict regulations. Not only, right now there's a shortfall of all types of housing, from low-income housing to high-end housing. And if something happens that causes that development to be slowed down or to be further restricted or even prohibited in some cases, then all of those home categories are going to be impacted. I would say particularly affordable housing, since there is a very severe shortage at the present time. The hope that, and there was a conference that I attended last weekend on that very subject that dealt with the availability, or succinctly, the lack of availability of affordable housing, and how that also contributes to the homeless situation. It all ties together, but ultimately it comes back to the developers being able to produce a product. And the more restricted they are, the less product is created, the fewer houses are built, and that's going to drive up the housing market, which is in effect going to exclude many of those persons who are looking for affordable housing from that market. It affects everyone in each of those income categories, especially those seeking affordable housing.
So in other words, you're saying that for us affordable housing, there'd be less being built because the contractor cannot afford to build because of restrictions.
That's correct. Well, not that they can't afford to build, it's just that they are unable to build. I think one main point, and John Bridger brought this out very well at his last presentation to this council, is that in this area, in southeast Tennessee, most of the flat land, developable land, is gone. The only thing left to develop in this area, and if you drive around and look at existing subdivisions, and even ones that are being proposed, considered right now, they're on slope properties. Pretty much all that's left in this area are properties that have some degree of slope, some severe slopes, some moderate, some light slopes. But they all have some degree of slope, and most of them, to one degree or another, are within the floodplain or 100-year flood area. Now, historically, I know someone mentioned the fact that most 83% to 85% of the zoning cases involved property that had either flooding or steep slope characteristics. And the fact is that all development up to this point has been allowed in the floodplain or in the 100-year flood area as long as that property is filled to a level 1 foot above base flood elevation. All development has been permitted up to this point. So to restrict floodplain development to 50% of what's out there would involve a considerable amount of property. Those properties have been built on successfully for decades. And I'm speaking of properties within the floodplain, as well as properties that are sloped. Developers know very well, and they're required, and it's also part of their best development practice to make sure that whenever they're developing on slopes or filling within a floodplain, that they're taking every measure that they possibly can to be sure that adjacent properties are not harmed by excessive water runoff, which is what I understand is the primary concern of the citizens that have been before this body, that new development on slopes could possibly create additional runoff. But there's also, as I'm sure your attorney can tell you, ample legal local precedent for those people that have not taken the measures that they need to. The courts have sided with the persons that have been damaged because of excessive water runoff from new development. So every developer that I know is very aware of that situation. They all take extreme measures. They do everything that they can to make sure that that does not happen. Number one, because they want to have sustainable developments. They want to create a product that is welcome within all areas, and they obviously don't want to run afoul of the law. And again, there is ample precedent that says, no, that's not something that you want to do. So they incorporate into their development practices everything that is necessary to make sure those concerns are always addressed.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I do want to remind the council that we are in committee meeting, and this is not a public hearing. So as much as I welcome everyone's questions, I would ask that you reach out to Mr. Bennett with any questions that you might have, and so they have an ample opportunity to answer them throughout the week. But we are in a committee meeting, and this is a special session that we are trying to gain more information from them. And I do have one more light, and that is Dr. Burrs, please.
Thank you. This is a legal question for Phil.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think I heard you say this. I'm following up on Councilman Mitchell's question. Whatever we do would be prospective, not retrospective. In other words, people that already have approved projects, this would not affect them.
Would not affect a subdivision plat that is already approved, no.
All right. What about one that is in the process of being developed partially and there's still more? It would affect that, correct?
But potentially, it depends on how large of a development that was initially presented as a site plan, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burrs. Councilman Byrd?
Yes, just definitely giving me some insight on why you are against it. And I would like to hear from you also concerning, because I hear a lot in my districts and Councilwoman Coonrod's district, there's a lot of development and things that can happen in these districts. Why are we concerned about these steep slopes when there's so many properties in our districts that are not being developed? So if I can get emails or some type of information to that point and to the point of why you are so much against these issues, I'm pretty sure we can have a conversation back and forth and talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Byrd. I have one more light. Councilman Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You opened the door for Mr. Bennett to speak, and I've got a question for him that I would like to ask. Mr. Bennett, would you? So besides taking no action on this resolution, what solutions would you have or do you have to a temporary development requirement?
Really at this point in time, all the home builders are asking for is before any new resolution or regulation is passed, even a temporary measure, is that they be afforded the opportunity to meet with John and his staff at the RPA and any other interested stakeholders to discuss these issues, and then and hopefully come to some agreement as to what achieves a good balance between the concerns of area citizens and the needs of the community for new housing and the opportunities for home builders to continue to fulfill that need.
When you say home builders, you mean a representative of the home builders?
Well, I'm sure that that group would be comprised of actual home builders, as well as representatives such as myself. But the main thing is that they are just requesting the opportunity to meet with staff, to meet with others that are interested, to discuss any potential regulations and the impact it may have on both current and future development proposals.
So right now, you don't have any suggestions. You're just saying just meet and see what we come up with.
That's correct. You know, we were presented with a proposal that does impact development on both slopes and in floodplains, and there are a lot of things to consider, you know, just before adopting a general regulation. I'm not saying that what's being proposed is bad. I'm not saying that what's being proposed is good. I'm saying that it just hasn't been afforded the opportunity to be considered by all those who would be impacted by the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Henderson. Mr. Bennett, I have just disagree with you on one thing. I think that the home builders is saying it's bad, from the judging from what Councilman Byrd asked.
Well, that's correct. I was saying that
Okay.
I wasn't making a judgment at this point as to what, me personally,
Sure.
as to what was bad or good. Just that you know, there's not been the opportunity to look at it in depth to determine what the problems are. On the surface, it does appear that it would have a negative impact, at least on some current developments that are being proposed.
Understood. Thank you. And let me reiterate at this time, are you done, Councilman? Good. That it is not our intent to cause complications. Right. This is, we are willing to, we want to work with stakeholders and citizens and anybody who has an interest in this. This is our attempt to try to do that. So if there is any kind of information, and I do applaud Councilman Henderson for asking that very direct question, if you have solutions to help us, then please present them and present them quickly, because this is an important task. This is something that we deal with on a regular basis. We see at Planning Commission, we see on this council, and I think that we want to create a balanced situation working with everyone. And so I would encourage you to please start that.
Well,
that process.
That's exactly the reason that we want the opportunity to meet with RPA and stakeholders is to come up with those solutions and to achieve that balance.
Sure. I would encourage that to happen, though, extremely fast, because as we notice with government, things don't work as fast as they need to, and I think that we're committed to this challenge. We're committed to working with everyone involved. We do not want to slow up progress. We do not want to cause any kind of complications. We certainly don't want to create shortages of any kind, especially when it comes to housing and jobs. And this is something that I think that we are moving forward with quickly, and I appreciate your willingness to come. Appreciate you reaching out to me and coming and speaking before us, and everyone who came to support this, because you know, at the end of the day, I promise you, we're all on the same side.
Yes, sir.
We are all on the same
We
side,
certainly
moving
thank you for the
Chattanooga forward.
opportunity.
And I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see no more lights. Mr. Bridger, do you have any other comments you'd like to make before we adjourn?
Now, I guess whenever you make a decision, let us know, I guess, as far as if you're going to put it on the agenda or not. You know, staff is already developing a scope of work for the long-term solution, and we will, within the next couple of weeks, present that to you, the formal report. We've just been slammed with, we had long planning commission yesterday.
We pushed you a little bit on this,
Yeah,
and I know we did. And I have one question I'd like to ask the city attorney, if I can. Mr. Attorney, this is not on our 20th agenda yet.
Not yet.
It is not on our agenda. So for those of you who are looking at me very intently, this is not on our agenda yet. So please make note of that. Any other questions or comments on this item? If not, I will adjourn us till 6.
And I don't have it on your agenda yet, do I?
I didn't see it.
Okay, all right.
No.
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Quite frankly, I was hoping it wasn't.
Okay. It is not.
I'm not sure I'm ready.
Okay, y'all tell us when you want it, we'll put it, but.
I feel you.
Yeah, it's not on the 20th agenda.
I didn't think it was. That's going to be the next question. Blah, 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 so.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, I know,
Yes, ma'am.
I get it. Before, because that's the waterfall that starts.
You're right. They just asked me to come, so.
I know. That was, I thought you figured out what I